welcome to BARI Banter, where we talk everything bariatric surgery with the people that know it best, the patients. I'm Shannon, and I'm here with my co-hostess with the mostest,
Lita. So sit back, relax, and remember, sip, sip, sip.
Well, what's new in the world of Lita?
Well, what's new in the world of Lita is I got another PB today, just so because
I feel like that's a...
You forgot about it last week, so I just wanted to throw it out there this week. But
I feel like it's becoming a common segment.
Yeah, well, that's great.
It's like, I got another PB.
I'm lifting heavier. Get over it.
Right,
but the thing that's new in my world is that I actually did a little bit of research before today's episode, and I have some questions to ask you. So,
okay.
How you feeling?
You're going to do me this week?
Yeah, I'm going to do you.
Wow.
Do you on air.
Not all heroes week, hey?
It's really funny because one of those questions is actually about the nasty, so...
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
wow, you've gone weird angles this week.
So
Hit me.
the first question is, did you cheat on pre-op?
Did I cheat on pre-op?
You're like, who am I cheating on?
I'm like, I don't think I dated a pre-op. No, I didn't. I was actually really by the book, and I was by the book until probably like 6 months
you met
after.
me.
Pretty much, it definitely aligned. But no, I was very by the book to the point where like I was calling them to make sure I could have certain vegetables and stuff because I could have certain things. I wanted it to work. So.
Did you have a cheat meal before your night going in before surgery?
The worst thing. So like I wanted to have like that last blowout meal because
That's right.
something in my head was like, I'm never gonna be able again. I need to have like my favorite last food. So I was like, I'll go to Mum's and have sweet and sour pork because I was kind of that's my jam. And then went over to mum and dad's, and she cooked me stir fry, and I was like, what? Why?
Why would you? Yep.
Yeah, I thought I would start you early because you're going to be healthy from here on in, so I'm just going to get you straight onto the stir fries. And I was like, no, I think you're missing the point of this.
The night before surgery, I had a slice of pizza because my family had visitors over, and I was like, this is the worst night to have like a pizza party. So anyway, they all ordered Domino's pizza, and I had one piece of pizza and a salad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Going out on a high.
So this is a funny one because you can totally relate to this. How bad was the gas pain? People are comparing it to childbirth.
Literally. Like I've had many children. Was nowhere near the gas. Gas pain was a tough one for me because I woke up in that kind of disheveled state. Like, did I actually do it? And then I had like the real sore pain, and I was like, and I felt like I wanted to vomit. I think I'm just a little whinger, to be honest.
Sounds like it.
It was pretty bad for me. How about you?
Well, I didn't really experience gas pain at all, to be honest. Like, it was worse for my gallbladder removal rather than my sleeve surgery. So I kind of was getting up and moving around my room. Like, I was doing laps in my room, then I was doing laps in the hallway, and then I was doing laps in the ward. So, like, I was kind of getting up and cutting laps the whole time. So that was really good. Did you how many times did you shit yourself?
Wow. Okay. I thought it was going to be a shit question, but then you changed it, and then I was like, is it a shit question? I've never shat myself.
All right,
yeah, like I know you have. I personally haven't shat myself. Why, did you shit yourself a lot?
No, I never shat myself. These are coming off the gastric pain.
Oh, okay. I thought you wrote them. And I'm like, really strange question.
No, these have come off the gastric sleeve page.
I don't know what part of the category you're looking at on there because I never saw any of these questions. But no, I did not shit myself. No, I didn't.
No, okay. Well, the last one is, how long after surgery did you wait to do the nasty, and was it passive or aggressively?
Well, I kind of had a separation.
I think aggressively was probably the wrong word. It should be subjective rather than...
It was quite a while for me because I was recently single. You
didn't get straight on Tinder and start writing and sliding?
I did, but I got no matches. So, yeah. I think it would have almost... Man, it would have been a good year. It's
really funny because when I used to do the consent appointments at my old work, we used to bring out like a guide to activity after surgery, and right at the very, very bottom it had sexual activity, and one of them was passive and one of them was subjective, I guess you call it. Yeah, but
I don't know what defines passive and
on
subjective.
top or underneath. Like if you're, and the only people that would ever point that out were the males.
Oh, true. Okay. Yeah, well, no, I still don't think I've had non-passive sex. No, is what I would consider.
Too much information.
You asked the question. Maybe you'll learn your lesson next time. Let me ask the question.
Well, this is a great segue to get our guest on tonight.
Yeah.
Segues are still not our best friends.
I thought you were going to say actually is, and I'm like, wow, have I missed some kind of question on here? Like, how's this segue
After 94 episodes, we still haven't nailed our segues. But anyway, that's why half the people listen to us. But today's guest went under the knife just 7 months ago to have the sleeve done after suffering from some binge eating disorders for many years and physical exhausting herself at work. She decided it was time to turn her life around. Here to talk to us about her incredible journey thus far, please welcome the resilient, the passionate and the thoughtful Tash, also known as peachy.tash on Instagram. Hey lovely, how you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for taking your time out of your day today to come and chat with us.
Yeah. Absolute pleasure. So let's get stuck into it. I want to know about you prior to surgery. So I like to ask the question, what was your why? What was the reason you decided, hey, I need to go down the lines of weight loss surgery?
I think before I start, I might just do a quick trigger warning for anyone listening who I will be talking about eating disorders. So for anyone listening, if that's triggering for you, just be mindful.
Yeah.
But for me, I basically... my initial reason for wanting surgery was just nothing was working. My highest weight is what a lot of people in the community actually would consider their goal weight. So my highest weight was only 108 kilos, but with my ethnic background, I was having the health problems of somebody 150 kilos. So I was having so much pain and I was having asthma attacks all the time and just nothing I was doing was working. And even recovering from binge eating disorder wasn't enough. So, yeah, I chose to go down the path of surgery.
Because your binge eating disorder, it was quite a path, because Lita kind of gave me a run through it today. Because yours, you had to go through a certain process leading into surgery for that whole situation. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for about 2 years before I before I actually had surgery, I hit a point in my life where just a lot of things were really going wrong and I was in a really dark place in mental health wise. I live in a small town by myself with no friends or family out here. I've been here for a while and that's just how it is. And my binge eating was out of control. I was just falling down these what we call like blackout binges. And I had some therapy to deal with it in the past, but hadn't actually acted on it or was kind of in denial. And so for a whole year, I really tried just to beat my binging, so just not binging, basically. Spent one weekend with someone in my life who unfortunately triggers binges and blacked out and had to restart my journey again. So basically, I had to learn how to, I guess, keep going and not binging before I even got to the point of surgery. But I chose to see my surgeon 6 months prior to me actually being eligible to have surgery, just so I could say, hey, what do I need to do to make this successful? I want to beat this disorder. I'm 6 months into being binge free. What do I need to do? And then he got me on to seeing one of his psychologists who specializes in eating disorder recovery, both binge and restrictive. Worked with her for 6 months, and 2 months prior to surgery, I was 1 year binge free. I'm not even sure where I'm at now. I think, in September I'll be 2 years binge free. So, yeah.
Can you explain to somebody who, like, obviously I've heard of like binge eating and I've heard of like bulimia, like I've heard all the terms.
The thing I'm learning is there's scales of it.
Yeah. So what was binge eating to you?
So one of the biggest misconceptions with binge eating is overeating versus binge eating. A lot of people will use the term when they haven't been diagnosed, and unfortunately it creates a bit of a stigma for people who do have the disorder. So binging for me basically was what I call blackout binges, where I've eaten so much food and I have no recollection of actually eating it. Planning binges, where you would literally plan out you go to the shops and you just buy all this stuff and you'd lay it all out and you'd eat it in one go into the point where you wanted to throw up. This is where the trigger warning comes in. Sometimes you would be sick and then continue to eat. It's hiding food. So things like I would hide food in my bag at work. And when no one was around, I would sit there and eat it. I eat in the car, having a meal before going somewhere else. Just things like that. It's mostly for me, it was to do with my emotions. Just eating wherever I could, basically.
Really interesting, because like I kind of have thought in the past, did I have binge eating? But then as you were saying that, I'm like, I feel like mine maybe fell into gluttony, like more than binge eating. Like, because I have similar experiences where, you know, I'd eat to the point where I'd feel sick, and then I would, like when I was a kid, I used to go to Pizza Hut and lay under the table until my stomach settled, just so I could go again. And I'm like, is that binge eating, or is that just gluttony? Like, is that just me? So like, you know, so it's really interesting.
And it's funny because we were talked about it last week's episode, and like I don't call it binge eating because I don't think it was binge eating, but I was a closet eater. So like, because my mum would restrict so much from me, I would go and I would binge on this one food, but it wasn't like it was an all the time occurrence. It was just kind of like quick. I got $5 pocket money. I'm going to go down to the shops and I'm going to buy whatever I can with that $5, eat it all so mum doesn't know that I'm eating it, and then go home. Like, so I don't think it was necessarily like, I would never say that I had a disorder. It was just kind of like I'm being naughty, I've got to hide it from mum / like, yeah. But I guess it all kind of falls into a category. But then again, as you were just saying, Tash, like we as a general community, we like to just say that we had binge eating disorder, or like it's very easy for us to say that we had it.
I honestly want to know the medical thing for, because the last thing I want is people to be insensitive to it. And I think sometimes when you use it as like I had, you know, is it being insensitive to people who actually do? Same as depression. You know, depression is the same thing. When people are like, I had depression and I just got over it. And it's like, yeah, there's a difference between like, you know, what you're eating depression, or, you know, that part of your life depression, and actual clinical depression. Like I've lived with someone who had clinical depression, and there was nothing, as much as they wanted to do something about it, they couldn't, you know, so I think it's a similar situation. You know, when you were talking about the sick side of things, were you ever like, you know, doing things to kind of make yourself sick in order to continue, or is it just literally you were eating to a point where you got sick and then, you know, and then you would find food, or were you doing things that you look back on and like were very self-detrimental to a point that went beyond the binge eating?
For me, I've only had binge eating disorder since I was 23 or 22, 23, so I'm now 30. The being sick was never by force with binge eating disorder. However, I have had bulimia as well, which I'll go into as we chat. But I think it only happened like once or twice where I just ate so much, I was really sick. And then I'm like, well, I'm still hungry. But really, I was emotional. So I just, turned to food.
Because that's what I was going to ask, because you mentioned on your form that you did have bulimia. And I wanted to know, like, was that before the binge eating disorder, or like what my question was in my head, I was like, did you go through phases where you'd, you know, have a bit of binge eating, and you'd go through like a phase of binge eating, and then you'd almost feel like remorse or regret, so then would you then go on the opposite end of the scale and go through like a bulimic stage? And please don't take offense to how I'm wording any of this. I don't know how to...
We're being inquisitive. We're not trying to be insensitive. We're honestly just being inquisitive because it kind of intrigues us, and I think we want to know more about. And
if you don't want to answer any of the questions, just tell us that you don't want to, and we'll move on. But so, sorry if it sounds insensitive. We're just curious.
No, I'm an absolute open book, and the reason why I talk so much about it online is because it wasn't really talked about before. So I will, happy to go through it. I think I'll give you a little bit of a backstory though, just to make it make sense.
Yep.
So when I was young, grew up with a single mum. Parents had been separated since I was a toddler, basically. And then when I was 10, I wasn't doing great at school in a small country town, so I moved back to the city with my dad, who didn't have the best relationship with food at the time. And in our culture, you eat what's on your plate and you don't get up until it's eaten. So I started, I think in like 3 months as a 10-year-old, I put on 20 kilos. And it was very noticeable to everyone around me, and lots of comments were made, particularly by family members or like extended family. So I was told, you need to go and do some kind of sport, or you're moving back to the country away from all your friends. So I ended up joining probably the worst sport for a child's mental development, but dancing, professional dancing. And when I was about 12, discovered after being quite unwell once that I could lose weight through being sick. So I developed bulimia at the age of 12. It came and went. So sometimes I would like I remember at the very beginning, like I lost quite a large amount of weight to the point where I was wearing baggy jumpers to almost hide it because I lost it so quickly. I remember, I don't know if you guys remember when there was the phase of like people running around the clothesline back and forth, but I used to do that in our living room, just run in circles. I had a really strict regime. I had this whiteboard that I religiously had, and I took measurements. And then through my teenage years, kind of all those Dolly magazines that used to talk about how to get thin quickly, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Like I fell down that hole. It was a bad time. And unfortunately, the people in my household were encouraging it and made it a lot worse, continually compared me to the white girls around me who had different body figures because they have a different genetic structure. And it kind of like came and went. I remember one time my dance teacher pulled me aside and was like, "You're no good to me because you haven't eaten. Like, you need to eat for this entire session. I need to sit you in the corner and you need to eat." Wow. It was bad. And I remember like someone gave me a Tic Tac, and that, because I hadn't eaten, it like set off this chain reaction in my stomach. Then it continued. I moved out of home, and it got worse when I moved out of home around 21, 22. And then I had a health scare and ended up having to have my gallbladder out, ended up in hospital. But it was 3 months of no one believing something was wrong. I didn't know it was hereditary, but I thought that my bulimia put me in hospital. Then had a really rare complication in the hospital and was left in the corridor for 7 days not being fed. And so I came out extremely hungry and thinking that I can never purge again. But I never resolved my eating disorder. So it then morphed into binge eating. So from 23 up until, about 2 years ago, so 28, I had binge eating disorder, but it did kind of go between binging and then bulimia. So there was a period in 2017 where I did resort back to my bulimia, which was actually when I started my Instagram account and didn't disclose that that's why I was losing weight. Then got really sick, got pneumonia, put all the weight back on, and hadn't purged since.
Yeah, wow. You talked about when you used to have your episodes with the binge eating, there was a certain person, and again, don't answer if you don't feel like you want to answer, but was there kind of a domestic violence kind of situation? Like the way you said it, I was kind of like, it didn't sound like a very healthy situation to be in. Again, don't answer if you don't want to, but like I just kind of want to understand, was there a certain amount of trauma that led you to having these relationships with food and yourself?
Yes. There was, I'll be careful how I say this, but the household situation wasn't great. Yeah. And then between the ages of 16 to 22, I got myself into some circumstances that were extremely traumatic because I had no one really looking out for me. Got very good at hiding what I was doing, hiding where I was going. And it led me sort of to always turn to food. I didn't have the best childhood, and my parents, they've apologized for that. We've spoken, and I've gone through countless years of therapy for it. I do have borderline personality disorder, which I was only diagnosed with about 5 years ago. Prior to that, they thought I was bipolar, so I was getting the wrong treatment for 10 years. Wow. There's a lot of emotional stuff going on, and a lot of stuff I've had to work through just to get to where I am today. Yeah,
It's one of those things. I have talked about it, earlier, and thank you for
thanks
talking
so much.
Because I know it is one of those things that's really hard to talk about. Like I went 30 years without telling anyone about my early trauma. Which was, now that I look back, as soon as I let it out and started talking about it and kind of like dealing with it, was a huge a huge thing for me to kind of get past it and realize that's why I was so, I was doing things to my body and not caring for it because I didn't see the value in it to a degree. So it was kind of, having you open up about it, it might have other people kind of, start to deal, not deal, but like take the steps to kind of open up to someone or have the chat, because sometimes when you bottle it up and you don't, it leads to bigger issues down the track, i.e. example A over here. Thank you for doing that. And borderline personality disorder, did I say that right? Can you explain what that is? Because I don't know.
So borderline personality disorder is quite similar to bipolar. It's actually one of the most common disorders that people can have. It's also one of the most misunderstood disorders. So even though the word has like borderline and personality, it's not like a split personality disorder. Basically, you have to have, I think, 5 out of 9 characteristics. But in a nutshell, you have trouble trusting people, and it's usually caused from having a difficult childhood or extreme trauma as a child. You have trouble, you kind of see things in black and white. So you either assume someone hates you or you assume they like you. There's no in between. And it's really hard to sort of process the world around you because you think that everything is in this sort of like good or bad, black and white kind of situation. A lot of people who have borderline personality disorder, or I'm just going to shorten it to BPD, also tend to have eating disorders, particularly binge eating disorder, because you're prone to impulsive behaviors. So like impulsive spending, like for example, I just chopped all my hair off today. It was a lot longer than this.
When I was looking at your Instagram, you had long hair and then all of a sudden you don't.
Well, the impulse choice is a good one because it looks great.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Thank you. You impulse spend, you become very sexually promiscuous. I'm not saying all these things, but they're characteristics of it. And usually it's a way to sort of cope with the world. So you can't control something, you feel like the world's spiraling, so you turn to whatever your vice is, be it food, sex, money, whatever. Other things are like you have trouble for being in the room. So just say you go into a meeting and someone gives you a funny look. All of a sudden, you're not listening to a word that's going on in that meeting. You're just thinking, so-and-so doesn't like me. And you can't not focus on that. So yeah, there's a few different characteristics. So things like fear of abandonment, or one of the other things that is a big thing is mood swings. So like bipolar have mood swings as well. However, when you're bipolar, it goes for a period of like weeks or days to months to weeks. With someone with BPD, it can be like 5 minutes I was happy and in 10 minutes I'm like really angry. Ready to like stab someone, and then 10 minutes later I'm like crying in a corner.
Wow. I don't want to like say, but a lot of things you just said, I was like, wow, that's kind of me to a degree, in a weird way, because a lot of those things I was like, apart from the sexual promiscuous one, because I didn't have a choice on that one. No girl wanted to go near me. But like a lot of those things I was like, wow, I kind of, maybe that could be a side effect of, my trauma a little bit, that I have that, because I'm the same. I'm so untrusting. Like I do not trust many people purely because I have a feeling they're going to do, and I always put it down to like at school, being someone will be nice to you and then next minute they'll push you over someone or something like that. But yeah, I was kind of like, wow, that's really interesting. But it's also like, it would be really hard to go through life with that. Like it's like an ultimate insecurity kind of thing, which I just think mine's insecurity. It's probably not that, but yeah, that's crazy. And how is your mental state going now? Like how is now you've started to deal with it? Is it coping a lot better, or do you feel like you're making progress in that department?
Yeah, so my surgeon recommended to see a counsellor who specialises in dialectical behavioural therapy, which is a particular type of therapy that's used for people with eating disorders as well as people with borderline personality disorder. I saw her probably a year ago to the day, and I've officially finished all my sessions with her. I don't need her anymore.
I just got goosebumps. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. I was one of the better patients though. Prior to seeing her, I had about 7 years of cognitive behavioural therapy, which is what most people have when they go to a psychologist, which talks about like your childhood, anything traumatic that's happened, just basic things, day-to-day stuff, whereas the dialectical sort of focuses on like, okay, well, you had this reaction, this is how we're going to deal with that in the future. This is how you can process these situations and sort of think about things. So I'd sort of done a year of that before I moved out regionally, which was in 2018. And then I haven't had access until my surgeon suggested this one, and I could do it online. But I'm doing really well. Like really don't struggle anymore. I know exactly what's going on. I vocalize I'm very open with my workplace. I'm lucky to have a boss that's amazing. And I just say, hey, my moods are all over the place today, so please don't take anything personally. I'm just going to be a bit quiet or something. Yeah. So I try not to take it out on people.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're about to abuse him and you're like, just FYI, I'm having a bad day today. You're an asshole.
You're like, well, actually, that wasn't my bad. That wasn't my mood swings. You're just an asshole.
Someone described me lately as saying, oh, when Tash is stressed, she's a bit bitey. And I was like, fair enough.
Okay, yeah, I'll deal with that. Yeah. Well, I think also you're very good at talking and like communicating. So I think I think that kind of would play in, like, I don't know if you've had to become like that or if it's just natural for you, but like you're very good at talking. So I think that would probably work in your behavior. Wow. Yeah. I'm clearly not good at talking.
You'd be terrible if you had to do with this.
I would be terrible.
Have there been any, obviously coming from binge eating and, bulimia and stuff like that, did your surgeon and the team kind of put any special things in place to kind of help guide you a little bit better? Because obviously there'd be certain triggers you'd have to avoid, I'm assuming. Was it all pretty straightforward, or was there special things you kind of had to be aware of and not do, or?
So I chose to see my surgeon 6 months before I was even eligible. And it was actually way too early for them to even book my surgery. They were like, you have to come back in September. We can't book your surgery. It's too early. But I did that on purpose, knowing that there's probably some work I needed to do. I'm the type of person that researches the absolute shit out of everything. I was listening to your podcast while showering all the time. I know it's a weird way to listen, but that's how I did my research. I took notes. I watched so much stuff. My particular surgeon has a video series on YouTube, and he talks about the pros, cons, what happens after surgery, all of that. And I just researched a lot and thought, okay, I need to get in early, so I need to know what to do. So the main thing for him was, instead of just one session with a psychologist, was to see the psychologist for as long as I possibly could before surgery, and to try and lose some weight, even if it was just 5 kilos, which I did do before surgery, but I only was able to do it in like a month or two beforehand. So it was mostly just to work on my eating disorder recovery, because if I had gotten the surgery when I wanted it, which was a year prior, it wouldn't have worked for me. I would have just gained the weight back on. I would have struggled.
So obviously with your background and leading into surgery and things like that, I'm going to guess that the weight loss wasn't necessarily the biggest thing on your mind that you were trying to sort of achieve out of this whole situation, or was it primarily weight loss that you were just like, I need to have the surgery to help with the weight, or was it sort of like a whole embodiment?
I feel like you have weight loss surgery for weight loss.
No, but there's so much more
get what you're
to
saying,
unpack.
but like, so did you have weight loss surgery? Did you help with the size of your feet?
Shut up. You're so mean to me.
No, it was to lose weight. It wasn't for aesthetic reasons. It was because I had a lot of health problems. So I was having asthma attacks every day, basically. I was getting sick a lot. I have a condition called plantar fasciitis. It's from being a dancer, but the weight, it was so bad that first thing, stepping on the ground, it was like pain straight through my feet. I was having back pain. I couldn't even drive a car, and I drive. I do a lot of road trips because I live in the middle of nowhere. And after an hour, I'd be in so much pain all the time. It was for those things. I guess my bottom line was I just wanted my life back.
Yeah.
My weight was, as I said before, it was the equivalent of someone at 150 kilos, even though I was only 108, and I couldn't lose it no matter what I did. And my doctors were getting concerned, but the problem is for my job, I've had to be weighed for medical. And I said to my doctor, look, after this, I don't want to be weighed. I have a history with eating disorders. Like, I don't want any talk about my weight. I'm sick of the weight stigma I mention I have headaches and it's always, have you tried losing weight? No, that's not what's causing my headaches. And so he didn't feel comfortable to bring surgery up with me. And then out of curiosity, I was getting worried that I was becoming pre-diabetic and asked to get my bloods done. in the back of my mind, I was thinking about surgery, but I hadn't actually vocalized it to anyone yet. And when we went through the results, he was like, you're like 6 to 18 months away from a bunch of health problems if you don't change your weight. Like, I'm sorry to bring it up, but you need to do something. And I turned to him and I was like, I've been researching weight loss surgery and I think I'm going to do it. And he was like, oh, I can talk about it now. He'd actually studied with, when he did his doctorate, he was like I think it was an intern for a surgeon who did weight loss surgery. So he knew all about it and was just ecstatic that I was considering it. So he fully supported me in that. And I guess going through that blood work sort of confirmed that it kind of was my only option.
Yeah, it sounded like you had some issues going on, health issues, definitely. Do you feel like, we talked about earlier with the borderline personality disorder and also when you were younger with having your family kind of criticizing your weight. Do you feel like the weight for you meant, like towards when you had surgery, was the weight meaning more, do you feel like it was meaning more to others than it was to you? Like, do you feel like sometimes you wanted to lose the weight to kind of, because you were saying you walk into a room, make other people more comfortable in the situation, because it feels like a lot of the pathway that led you to where you got to was other people's judgment on you rather than judgment on yourself. Do you feel like that played a big part?
Yes and no. So throughout having an eating disorder, I had body dysmorphia. I actually still have it now, and I talk a lot about like struggling with that while losing weight. So I always thought that I was fat. I always thought that I was this massive person. And when my surgeon was like, what's your history? And I was like, yeah, I've always been big, like always. And then it took me to get to my highest weights, and looking back at old photos, and I was like, Jesus, I was a size 8. Like, what?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it really got into my head. But when someone around you is constantly saying, like, look at that gut, or why don't you look like the other girls, you really buy into that. And I remember one day, one of my oldest friends at dance was just, we had these horrible, really revealing costumes, and I was complaining about how fat I was, and I was literally a size 10. And she just turned to me and was like, shut up. Nobody cares. We're worried about ourselves right now. That was a wake-up call. But I guess for me, like, it took me a while to get to where I am with being comfortable with being in a bigger body, to really understand what fat phobia and diet culture was. I kind of discovered it through working with an influencer. I was working with her brand, and she kind of went through this whole flip where she sort of acknowledged fat phobia and weight stigma and diet culture in the fitness community. And it sort of educated me about the fact that, you can be big and be fit, but sometimes you're not. And so for me, I wasn't healthy being in a bigger body, but I had to learn that to love myself at any size. And I really dove into that because I couldn't lose weight. So what else was I going to do but learn and love myself? Because hating myself wasn't achieving anything. And then I guess once I knew I wanted to have surgery, I was like, right, well, what do I want to be after I would lose the weight? Like, and I sort of listed all these things in my head, and I was like, why can't I start some of that now? Like, one, loving myself no matter what I look like. And that's something I learned to do over those 2 years of the 1 year of research I did and the 1 year of waiting that I did for the health fund to kick in. And I had to learn to shake what other people thought of me, and accept what my body looked like, knowing that it was going to change, but I needed to love it at my before weight before I got to where I am now.
I could seriously sit here and listen to you talk all day. I'm like, wow, everything you say is just so like insightful and intriguing.
Because even talk about the body positive thing, I just find it really funny and almost a little bit frustrating that we need to label things. Like, why is it that, like, if you're overweight and you like being overweight, you have to label yourself as body positive?
But then you also, once you start trying to agree, like, you know what, I want to get a little bit healthy now, people then turn around and go, hang on a second, but you've been body positive, why do you want to lose weight now? It's like, well, it's not that I want to lose weight, it's just that I want to start feeling healthy.
Yeah, but it's like, why do you need to even explain yourself? Like, if you think about it,
because of social media, it's just turned everybody into opinionated little so-and-sos.
Yeah, have we always been like that? Or did social media make it worse?
Social media is making it worse because we've got this platform that we can be like, stuff you guys, I'm going to take a photo in this bikini. Like, there's memes that we're like sharing around, and like it's just become, it's social media has, excuse the French, but fucked us really, to be honest. It's just made everybody so like, it's great for sharing, but it's also so triggering and so annoying for other people.
I don't get it because, like, honestly, the only question you should ever ask someone is, are they happy?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, life is freaking hard. Especially when you start adding, I'm a little bit overweight, but then I need to justify it by saying I'm body positive. Otherwise, that person's over there is going to criticize me for being overweight. But then I also can't have that because then that person's going to judge me for that. You know what I mean? Like, life's already hard enough without having to throw too many, like it's like a maze, you know what I mean? And you kind of got constantly throwing things in the way. It's like, I think sooner or later we just need to be like, and it is hard to do. Like, I think I'm finally getting to a point now where I don't actually give what anyone else thinks. Like, I honestly don't. Like, I think someone could have a go at me these days and I'll be like, cool, man. Like, have fun with that. I'm going to go live my life over here somewhere. Yeah. But I know for a long period of my life, it's taken you
a long time to get to that point.
100%. Yeah. But it's like, why do people and why do we kind of still live in this construct? Like, as much as people will sit there and be like, I hate that someone judges me for this, they will then turn around and then judge someone else for something else. And it's like, sooner or later, you just kind of have to go, okay, we're all kind of really messing up each other. Maybe I just need to stay in my lane. And because... it just, the more I talk to them, I'm just like, wow, we really are. Humanity is quite messed up to a degree in the social aspect these days.
Did you find that with you sort of like, being like embracing yourself and loving yourself at any stage and all that sort of thing, when you did decide to have weight loss surgery, did you feel what we were just talking about, the judgment and people sort of like, having their opinions and all those sorts of things?
Yes. So I... now call myself body neutral because I do understand the history behind body positivity. Originally, it came from the fat black movement. There is a lot of politics in movements, and so I had to sort of, I guess, one of the things I talk about a lot on Instagram is privilege, and I'm aware that someone's going to be offended by something you do, even if it's not impacting them. But I had people, DMing me being like, do you really love yourself if you're having surgery? And that's when I was like, no, that's it. I am setting boundaries and I'm going to make this part of what I talk about. Because like the audacity of someone to say that to me, like, of course I fucking love myself. Sorry for my language, but
totally.
I'm doing this for my health. But I think at the same time, like people can be easily offended. And I understand that from one point of view. But I also think people need to be comfortable with calling themselves out on their own bullshit. It's hard because, social media can be a place where people get little pitchforks and knives out and come for you. You say one thing wrong. And a lot of people are scared to turn around and say, look, I didn't mean that, But, I definitely had people get offended.
Well, it's almost, I said this, I had a conversation actually, I can't remember who it was the other day, but it's funny, like, because we talk about, the privilege thing was kind of what triggered this for me. And like being a white, straight male, I'm not allowed to have an opinion these days, like, because, I've got all the privilege in the world apparently. And I had this conversation.
You got red hair, so it's fine.
I'm a ginger. I have a little bit less. But it is funny how we have all become, I think we've become all very sensitive.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like I think I'm not one to ever look at someone and be like, oh, you're a female, I look down on you, or you're dark, like you've got darker skin, I judge you as well. And it's like almost by us doing this and like kind of creating these entitlement groups or whatever it is, we're almost making that divide still happen. Like I just don't understand why like we can't just all just be like, let's just like kind of live our own lives and, because I don't know.
But Tash put it perfectly though. Behind every movement is politics. And I think that a lot of people will jump on a movement without researching anything, but then they also don't want to have the conversation to educate themselves around that movement or to, they don't want to have the discussion.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you don't have discussions these days. And I said this the other day, like I see people do things on Instagram and I just want to have a nice discussion with them about that or like discuss a thing. But it's either you're being their hype girl or you're
You hate them.
having a go at them.
Yeah,
you
there's
know,
no in between.
there's no kind of discussion these days.
Yeah.
Everyone gets offended really easily.
Because people can just not reply. They just go, oh, no, I don't like you're coming at me. And
Yeah.
then they'll talk about you behind your back being like, oh, someone came at me the other day. I was like, no, well,
No,
I
was
just
having
wanted to have a conversation
for
with
my
you.
own
Like-
education and your own education. But yeah, like that's literally why I say these days.
So if Shannon never slides into your DMs, he's trying to have a conversation.
But that's like I literally my thing these days, and because you guys have swore, I get to do it once now too. You know, my whole thing for life now is we're all fucked. Just some hide it better than others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like we kind of like put yourself on a pedestal, but don't think others are and feel like you need to bring them down, because we've all got our issues. And by making more on someone else, you're making their life harder and probably making yours harder at the same time, because you know, when you give hate, you keep a little bit of that for yourself. So it's something to think about.
7 months down the track, you've sort of settled into life with your surgery. How is your relationship with food going now? Like, are you feeling like you're sort of on top of things, or are you still sort of struggling a little bit? How are you feeling about that whole food relationship?
I'm doing pretty well. I had a period of time where I was like, oh, I can eat the foods that I used to binge on. They go down fine. And I sort of had to be like, revert back to what I'd done prior to surgery and do are you eating this because you're hungry, or are you eating this because you're bored or emotional? I really have had to, like, now that I know I can eat those things and I can eat more of certain foods, I've had to really break it down. Are you hungry? Is this going to give you any nutrition? How is this going to make you feel in about 30 minutes? And sticking with that. I got really bad with my vitamins for a while and then realized, like, I feel like crap if I don't have them. So, yeah, I've gotten a lot better. I've set some like reminders on my phone. But, yeah, I think for a while, like, I struggled. When I came out of surgery, I was really hungry for a while. Like, I knew when I had to eat. It was great because I could feel it. And then about the 9-week mark, I just stopped feeling hungry altogether, like for about 2, maybe 3 weeks, and started to really struggle because I was forgetting to eat. And I was like, oh my God, like, I feel malnourished. Like, what do I do? And that's where my therapist came in handy. Like, having her 6 months post-surgery was crucial for me to get okay with food. But at the moment, like, really well, for me, everything, if I don't plan, I don't do well. So meal prepping for me is a big thing in my life now, and I dedicate like a Sunday or a Monday to just sit there and meal prep and have like, I don't like to say healthy or bad foods, but I guess like nutritional foods, because if I label things as healthy, it clicks in that BPD thing, and then I just binge restrict. But yeah, so just having everything prepped out, doing really well with it.
I feel like there would be so many different things like along this path that could be very triggering to you. Like, even just then when you were talking, like you said, you know, in the early stages, like week 9, you just didn't get hungry, so you'd forget to eat. And then it's kind of like, did that, like me just listening to you then, I was like, oh my God, would that have triggered you back into like back in dance days when your teacher was like, no, you've got to now sit here and eat all day. Like, I was just like, there'd be so many things that we who haven't struggled with disorders, we wouldn't have to think about them and we wouldn't have to go through those sorts of things. So I think that like it would be so triggering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did find it triggering. Like, I actually remember sitting there crying and forcing myself to eat, and it just brought back like really bad memories. But one of the things is it's more my journey, but going a little bit back into our discussion before, it's not up to other people to manage your triggers. So I'm not triggered by stuff I see on social media. I'm not triggered by people saying, oh my God, you lost weight, you look so good now. At first I was, and then I realized like I need to do the therapy to be okay with that compliment.
Yeah, because they're trying to compliment you.
Move on. Yeah. It's not up to other people to manage me. So some things were triggering, but I learned how to deal with it and just move on with my life. If I sat there getting upset every time, then I'm not going to be successful with the surgery.
Yeah, like the biggest triggering thing for a lot of people would be the scales. How have you dealt with, you know, the weight loss side of things? Have you found yourself getting it kind of addicted to like the weight loss? Like, have you know, how have you dealt with the weight loss side of things, like the actual number kind of side?
One of the things I did, because I was so like trying to make the waiting period really short, I just kept researching, and I went on a lot of the Facebook groups, and there's a lot of like repeated questions. I know you enjoyed having a look at some of the questions on there. But I saw that, okay, well, around this stage, some people don't lose weight for a couple of months. Their body starts to settle. And so I kind of managed my expectations. So when I lost weight really quickly, I remember thinking, oh, but I feel like I'm just starving myself. So I don't really want to look at the scales. And my whole bariatric team said, look, if it's triggering, don't jump on the scales unless you come to an appointment. I eventually resorted to only doing it once a week just to sort of see how I was going. And then after a while, like I stopped. I kind of just manage how I'm feeling. So sometimes I'm okay, sometimes I'm not. I don't count calories. I tried it for a while just until I got the hang of how much protein is in things, because that's really all I was tracking. And then I stopped counting calories. And then, yeah, only recently my weight started going down again after having 2 months of nothing. But I knew that was going to happen, so it didn't really set me off.
And you're still in the very early stages as well, so you've still got so much further to go. So don't sound like you kind of got your head switched on and you know what to expect. So
yeah, well, it's funny. One of the leaders' questions was one of the next questions was going to be, what's been your biggest hurdle? But I feel like you're the kind of person where you wouldn't even see hurdles. Like you'd just be like, I'm just going to bulldoze through these. You know what I mean? Like it's just another day. Have you had any moments throughout this process that you do look back at, like, you had to go through a lot to get through that period, or was there any parts you struggled with more than others?
I guess the first 3 weeks I was, the thing that hit me hard was because I wasn't able to eat enough protein, it messed with my hormones, and my hormones are directly tied to my BPD. So I was having manic episodes, like really bad. It was messing, and sorry, Shannon, but it was messing with my period a bit, which
happens to me all the time.
When that happens, it messes with my mental health. I become extremely depressed to the point where like it's almost touching suicidal. That's how hard it seems. Like the world's falling apart. So that got really hard. And just having to be like, oh, it's okay. Like this is going to pass. I just have to get through this. I just have to try and eat as much protein as I can, like take as much supplements until I can get my hormones back. Like I knew exactly what was causing it. But if anyone else had a mental disorder and didn't have the therapy or the knowledge, then having that massive drop in your mental health right after surgery, it would be really like crushing. Like you wouldn't know how to deal with it. So that was probably the hardest thing. I no one talked about that. I never heard anyone else go through it. So that was hard.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Someone probably went through it, but they just probably didn't share it because, like, people just kind of have this whole highlight reel situation where this is the stuff that needs to be shared, and this is why we love the podcast, is because this is the information people need to hear. Someone's gonna be like, oh wow, that makes me feel less weird because I'm not alone. Someone else has gone through it. You've obviously put a bit of focus on nutrition. Exercise, has it played a part for you?
At the beginning, I started probably 2 months before surgery, walking every morning, just to get into the habit, because I kind of thought, what do I want to be after surgery? And I wanted to be fit and active. One of my goals is to be able to hike when I go on road trips. So I started walking, stopped a little bit, maybe 2 months after surgery, and now my body is like, okay, let's get moving again.
Let's go again. Let's go.
So at my 6-month appointment, just a couple of weeks ago, I got a new exercise plan from my exercise physiologist, and I'm going to start doing that. And if I can brace the cold, I'm going to start walking in the mornings again, or running, because I'm actually finding the running's helping my asthma as well.
Nice. Yeah. Top tip that we found out the last couple of mornings, because it's been bloody freezing here in Queensland for us Queenslanders.
Yeah, it's been like 22 degrees.
It was 11 degrees this morning. Shut up. But we were saying this morning that it's actually warmer when the sun comes up. Before the sun comes up. So like we go for runs at like 4:30 in the morning, and it's not too bad. But then as soon as the sun comes up, the temperature drops, and it's really frosty and cold. So just get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and come for a run with us.
So you obviously have a few things you're working towards. What is next for you? Do you have any goals that you kind of focused on? Like, talk us through that.
So one of my biggest goals is hiking. So one of my hobbies is landscape photography. I live in smack bang in the southwest of Western Australia, and surrounding me are all these beautiful landscapes. We have Bluff Knoll, which is a very big mountain. All these places that I've never been able to go before because I couldn't do it. And recently I got a bit of a taste of that, visited my mum who lives on the coast. And I remember the last time I went there, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't walk up a hill without wanting to keel over and die. This time I could do it. I walked up all these really hard things, and my mum was puffed, but I wasn't. So that was like, okay, I want that. I love that.
Yep.
So hiking's a big thing for me. I want to be able to run, probably not to the extent that you two do it, but just on a leisure pace, just to kind of help with my asthma. And yeah, I just want to get out more, just do more stuff outside.
Love that.
No, it is. So literally, like, you know how you said earlier, skinny tastes better than fit. What was that thing that you said that was in the Dolly Mag thing?
Oh, what Kate Moss said. Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels.
Yeah, I honestly feel like that skinny word needs to be replaced with fit. Because nothing feels better than fit feels. Like I was talking to Ashley about this morning, and just being able to wake up and have energy, and like I think it's a lot to do with not drinking alcohol and stuff at the moment. But like I feel so good, you know, and that's a feeling I think I lost for a large period of my time, and I just became okay with feeling okay.
Yeah.
You know, where now I'm like waking up and I'm like, I just feel energized.
Now
and,
you're waking up at like 3:45, being like, let's go. And I'm no, I still want to sleep.
I think everyone should have the goal of like, not obviously getting to a point of just being ridiculous with your fitness, like i.e. example A and B. But you want to get to a point where you can just enjoy life without the constraints of, you know, like you just said, walking up a hill and not feeling like your lungs about to pop out of your butthole, you know, being able to just do things and just do things, you know. It's a funny feeling, it's a funny word, but like I know what it means. But, you know, do you have a piece of advice that you would pass on to someone just starting out?
Be prepared for it to be hard, but know that you can get through it if you just push through. I remember doing my research and just remembering people crying on their stories about how they regretted it, or they're like, this is so hard. And then 2 weeks later being like, this is easy. And me being like, okay, well, if I could just get through the next 2 weeks, it's okay. But just to be okay with it, not to be, like you said, a highlight reel.
Yeah.
It's a hard journey, and it's okay to doubt yourself and feel like you're not, I guess, meeting up to everyone else's expectations, but just get through it.
And understand it's not going to happen tomorrow. That's what you were saying then. Like, you know, I think sometimes I had literally the conversation with my little brother on the couch today where he's like, you know, I don't want to be disheartened because he's on a weight loss journey at the moment, but it's like, I just want to feel results now. And I'm like, that's the mentality I had. And that's why I lost 50 kilos 5 times and then put it back on, because I wanted instant change. So I made unmaintainable changes. And that's the thing I've done different this time. Yes, I'm at a point now that people will probably look at and be like, but that's ridiculous. I don't want to get to that point. But it's because I've gradually done what I've done that I have to then gradually undo it for it to go away. It's not going to be one of these things that I just go tomorrow, oh, this is unmaintainable, change it up, and then I head back to where I was. So, you know, understanding that it's going to be the little things, the 1%ers that are going to make the difference, and the things that probably don't feel like a huge change in your life that are eventually going to reap the biggest rewards. You know, that's kind of where my head goes with it anyway. But I think it's very sound advice, and I think, you know, if it feels like it's too easy, you're probably not trying hard enough, because it's like, you know, you want it to be, you want to go through the process.
Yeah.
So, no, sound advice.
And don't compare yourself to anyone else.
It's
every single person goes through this differently.
Yeah, it's so hard not to do though, and you know, as much as we always go on about it, like, don't compare yourself. God, it's hard.
It's the number one thing that everybody puts on that form that we send out. What's your one piece of advice, or what's the biggest thing, what's your most vulnerable lesson that you've met? And 98% of people say, don't compare yourself to other people. Yeah. But it's just so, in this day and age, it's so hard
But I've almost said now, like, you're going to compare yourself.
Yeah.
It's human nature. However, is it helping or hindering you?
Yeah.
You know, these days, I'll compare, but then I'll also go into that person's comment and be like, man, you're freaking killing it. Or, you know, or you go and be like, I'm so envious of that. Not in a way that I'm going to, you know, cut your legs next time I see you, but like, I'm envious because you're doing really well. You know, just because someone else is doing well doesn't mean you have to bring them down or yourself down. No. You can use it as motivation to get where you want to go, because unfortunately comparison is a human instinct that seems to be kind of ingrained into us these days, but understanding if it's helping or hindering you is the big part of it, because some people put themselves down and it doesn't end up. But it's great advice, and I 100% agree with that.
And if somebody would like to reach out to you and find out a little bit more about you, or they might be struggling similar things to what you're going through, where's the best place for them to catch you?
Yeah, so Instagram, it's peachy.tash.
Perfect.
Pretty simple.
Yep, cool.
We'll pop it in the comments below so people can find you and have a chat to you. And honestly, I just want to say thank you so much for opening up and being so honest and telling us everything that you have today, because sorry as well for being so hot-handed in the beginning.
Yeah, literally. That's a freaking come at her.
Yeah, sorry about that. But honestly, you've been absolutely amazing. We really appreciate you being you, essentially.
Yeah, and honestly, second that. Thank you. Thank you for opening up, talking about some things that people are really uncomfortable with talking about, because honestly, I like to have that conversation, because I know it would have helped me at one point as well. So thank you, Tash. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to our Patreons. We'll see you again next week. You can listen to us again next week. But that is another episode of
Bari Banter.
Why, yes, that is another episode of Bari Banter in the books. We hope you got a little something from that one.
Head on over to Facebook or Instagram and check us out, or go to baribanter.com where you can watch past episodes, give us feedback, and let us know who you want to hear from next.
We love you all, and as always, please stay beautiful.